Welcome back to From Corporate to Cashflow. We are Andrea Cannon and Liz Schwab, two pharmacists navigating the process of building time and financial freedom through real estate lending and investing while working our day jobs. Navigating the journey is difficult, but our podcast guests are experts in showing us how it's done. And today,
Today, we will be interviewing the one and only Andrea Cannon.
woohoo!
Very excited for this podcast. Very excited. So I know Andrea for over 10 years now, of course, one of my bestest friends. But I would love for everyone else to get to know Andrea a little bit more. She's very social, and I know many people do know her already. But let's dive a little bit deeper and see what more we can learn about her. So, Andrea. What we're going to first start off with is tell me about your journey. So, a little bit how you got started. I know that we kind of got into this in a unique way, right? We are both trying to answer some of the same questions, but just walk us through how you got into it and where you are today.
Yeah. And so I'm really going to start from like the beginning because it's kind of funny. My real estate journey goes back a lot farther than I have even the actual properties to show for it. But back when I was actually on my honeymoon, so it's been 10 years now since we got married, I actually brought a real estate investing book with me on my honeymoon, which sounds really lame.
Excited for you. Yes.
But there is going to be a theme of really like growth on like vacations and trips because I'm able to disconnect. And so you'll kind of see that. And that really started right at the beginning there. So I started reading and learning a little bit more about real estate back around 10 years ago. And I always knew I wanted to get into real estate. The rest of my family is not into real estate investing, but I have found that owning properties, I just, from reading about, other wealthy people, I knew that that was a way to build wealth and a reliable way to build wealth, right? Like if you held on to properties for long enough, they will eventually make you money. Now, granted, if you buy right in 2006 or something and you have to sell it in 2008, like that's not the scenario. But if you hold for long enough, then I was like, okay, I think this would be a great way to build wealth. And so that was sort of what I focused on back then. And, when we moved to Utah from North Carolina, I didn't really think I was quite ready for real estate investing, but we did buy a primary house at the time. And that was the first property that I ever purchased. And it taught me a ton of lessons. But after we were getting ready to leave Utah, we decided to sell the property because we figured we weren't coming back to Utah. My husband was doing a fellowship in Oregon, and we figured, okay, well, we're probably not coming back, so we might as well sell the property because do we really want to be, out of state landlords for the first time? And we are just like, I don't think so. So we ended up selling that property, which actually worked out pretty well because we made quite a chunk of change in that time. That was right during COVID when properties were going up significantly. And so it appreciated way more than it should have in the short time frame that we owned the property. And so then we had that chunk of change to then do something with later on, which ended up being pretty cool. So from there, we moved away from Utah to Oregon. Then we ended up actually moving back to Utah, ironically. So then we're like, maybe we should have kept that property. But immediately we decided we were going to start investing. And so we bought a duplex right away. And we moved into one side of the duplex. We basically took that entire chunk of money that I just mentioned earlier on the sale of our house 2 years prior, and we put it into this duplex. And I was like really excited. We're finally house hacking. We're doing the thing that we're supposed to be doing, like everybody else is, who's investing in real estate. And we just like put 30% down on this property, and it's cash flowing, and it's just awesome. And then we moved in, and I realized I really did not like house hacking.
Yeah.
So,
It sounds good in theory, right? Like it's such a popular term, like just house hack, like what a great steal, right? And it sounds good. It sounds good, but do you really want to do that?
yeah. And, there's a variety of different ways to house hack, right? So, house hacking basically just means like you're living in part of your house, and then there's other tenants that are living in other parts of the house, and they're helping you pay your mortgage. And so, in the instance of a duplex, we were living on one side of the duplex and our tenant was living on the other side. But there could be like a single family home with a basement apartment, or it could be that you're even renting out rooms in your house, right? So, at least we weren't doing that. But still living on the other side of our tenant, like immediately when we we moved in, we had a dog, and our tenant next door texted within the first week saying, hey, like, my kids saw that you have a dog. Can I have a dog? And it's like, well, in your lease, it says no pets. That was signed previously. Like, we're happy to, renegotiate the lease when your lease is up and add in a pet and, pet fee in then. And she never brought it up again. But it's just things like that where we were like, oh man, it just like is kind of weird living next to our tenants. We felt like we were kind of in a different stage of our lives at that point in time than to be living this. It was a small duplex, mainly like not a lot of storage. Like the actual square footage was 1,200 square feet, but there was like no garage, no basement, no attic, no like place to put things. So like we would come home from skiing or something, and we would have to put our skis in the living room because there just wasn't anywhere else to put it. And I was going bananas. It was 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths on each side. So the second bedroom was my office because I work from home. And so we really didn't have a place for any guests to come and stay. So like when we had people visit, they had to stay in a hotel. It just like was not what I was looking for. And so pretty quickly we moved out and ended up buying like a smaller bungalow that was just a single family home, not a duplex. And the way we did it was my husband bought the duplex in his name, and then I bought the bungalow in my name. So we didn't have to really worry about like, any like the timing of those or something like he may have had to, had that not been the case. And so we moved into this bungalow, and I was so relieved, like, oh my gosh, this is so much better than the house hacking situation. Now I'm finally like in my own space. We have this big backyard. It's, we put in this deck. It's like really nice, and we're like loving it, right? And then I started realizing, so I set a goal for myself. I want to buy 10 properties in the next 5 years. So between the duplex and this bungalow that we're living in now, we put almost all of that money in that we made on the sale of our first house into that duplex, right? So that was over $200,000 that we put down from the sale of that duplex. So it was just the appreciation. We honestly just got really lucky. And then we put another $80,000 down into the bungalow that we lived in. So now we put over $300,000 down in 2 properties. And I was like, okay, well, I'm kind of out of money. Like,
Right.
what do we do? Right. And I see all of these other people buying houses monthly, twice a month, all kinds of things. And I'm just asking, like, man, how is everybody buying all these houses? Like, what are they doing? Like, I just don't understand.
Right.
We're finally in this point where we're like established in our lives and our careers, and we're actually like making decent money, and we still can't afford to do these other things. Like, what are we missing?
Right. And these weren't like bajillionaires that we're talking about, right? These people that are
No.
buying houses and houses and houses. They're just, your everyday individuals.
Yeah, and I couldn't really figure it out. And so I started, just saying like, man, I'm wondering how, like, I'm saying this out loud, right? I'm wondering how
Yeah.
people are finding these houses. I'm wondering how, everybody's buying like multiple houses a year. I just don't
Yep.
understand how people are buying these houses, right? I'm saying this out loud. And through that process, I start getting targeted ads on Facebook for Pace Morby, a guy that is, saying you can buy houses with no money down. And immediately I'm like, well, that's a scam. Oh my gosh. Like,
Right, right, right.
and like I mean, I almost wanted to believe it was a scam, right? After putting $300,000 down on 2 properties, like that doesn't feel like the right financial
For
move at
sure.
that point if I could have gotten them for no money down.
I know.
So, I started looking him up on Bigger Pockets, which was my go-to resource for real estate investing. It's like an online forum. And I'm like, who is Pace Morby, right? And so like there's kind of like Reddit. There's like reviews of, people or things or questions that people ask, and they'll be like, it's crowdsourced answering. And it was a very mixed bag. Like some people really liked Pace Morby and some people did not. But I did see that he was coming out with a book. So I was like, okay, I'm going to read his book. It's co-published or published by Bigger Pockets. It must be legit. And so I ordered his book and I read it while I was on vacation in Alaska with my family. So kind of the second time that there's been, some big changes for me while on a trip. And I came back and I was like, oh, wow, like creative finance, which is what he was talking about by buying houses with no money down. Like, that's really cool. And they don't always work out like that, that there's no money down or something like that, but they're just a different way to buy properties. You can take over the mortgage that's already in place. If somebody owns the property outright, you can have them be the bank and seller finance that property to you, or a variety of other different strategies that he talked about in his book. So immediately when I got back, I started making phone calls and I was like, okay, I'm just going to start calling agents and talking to them about the properties and the listings they have and see if there's one that would be open to a creative financing solution. And so started making those phone calls, and then I realized I don't know what to do if someone says yes. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, what happens if
Right.
they say yes, we're ready to move forward? I'm like, ugh, I
And
don't
you're
know.
taking action, right? You're taking
Yeah.
action. Yeah.
Taking action, but it was messy, and I really didn't know like what my next steps were and how to protect myself. Like in a previous episode, we had Kayla Appleman on. She's a TC, and she, is a really great resource for protection. But I didn't even know who she was or that TCs existed at this point in time. So I'm just kind of doing the thing out on my own. And while that was a good approach, it wasn't necessarily like maybe the right move. So thinking about that, I was like, well, if somebody says yes and I don't know what to do, I think my next best step is to join a community of people that actually have done things like this before. So I joined Pace Morby's community, Sub 2, which is just his community of people who do creative finance and kind of the adjacent things with it. And so I joined Sub 2 and then got my first property under contract a couple weeks later, which happens to be the house that I currently live in. And that in particular changed my life, because I went from thinking, okay, you have to put down, multiple six figures on an investment property to, this $80,000 down for a small bungalow, to then moving into a property that's over 5,000 square feet in a gated community. And I put $20,700 down and ended up with a 3.49% interest rate with no balloon in October of 23, when interest rates were 8% at the time if you purchased traditionally. So that would have doubled our monthly payment on this house. And honestly, we probably wouldn't have even been looking at that because we don't want to be too mortgage heavy. So that was just an absolute life-changing experience for me. And it has only kind of gone on from there from a real estate perspective.
Yes, of course. And just to add additional context, so like why would someone even want to sell their house up to? Like the example that you just gave. So like how did that even happen?
Yeah, and I think, when you first hear about it, right? When I first heard about Pace Morby, just like I said, I'm like, it sounds like a scam because why would anybody want to do that,
Hmm.
right? But in this particular case, they listed their house. So even before that, actually, they bought their house for around 1.2 million, just under 1.3 million. And that was 2 years prior. And just the way the housing market kind of stalled slash slowly declined in Utah and other places after COVID, right? Not during COVID, but after COVID, we were really seeing that properties weren't selling and they needed to move out of the state for a job change for them. And so they listed their property in March. So it had been about 2 years since they've owned the property. And every 6 weeks, they list it for 1.3 million. Every 6 weeks, they started dropping the price of the property, until they hit $950,000. And at that point, they owed $957,000 on the mortgage. So and they had solar on the property that wasn't paid off. They had an agent that was helping them out. They had so many things that were going to cost them money to sell this house. And it was sitting empty. They really had no way of making money. It's in an HOA community where you can't do anything but a 12-month rental. So they really didn't have any alternatives besides just renting it out, which was going to be their next step, actually. But they weren't going to rent it out for more than the mortgage. They would still continue to lose money every single month. And so could they have held on to it a little bit longer, like as in, several years, and lost money every single month before eventually maybe recovering their funds? Or could they just cut their losses? We get in there. We've been on time on the payments, early on payments every single month since then, right? This is our home. We're so happy to live here. It's a beautiful place. I feel so happy and settled here. there's such a good deal for everyone, right? Like it worked out. The agent got paid by the seller. We got into a property for $20,700. That is just an absolute dream home. And the sellers got to offload the property and not have to think about it every single month and see their bank account going down and down and down every single month while they're renting it out, dealing with tenants, all the things.
To your point, they would have lost money regardless, right? If they would have sold it from the MLS, because at the end of the day, they would have had been writing a check to sell their home because they still had to pay their agent, right? And the price that it was listed with the money that they owed still. And then to your point, if they did rent it out, they wouldn't be renting it out for enough money to cover their current mortgage. So, um, okay, awesome. No, that's a great example and helps explain everyone like what that kind of looks like in real life, right?
Yeah.
So you told us about your journey of like how you heard about Pace Morby, how you started hearing about creative finance. So where are you now? Like, what are you focusing on? Where do you want to go? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the journey's been a little bit messy. I kind of got into, sub two in general and just the creative finance community because I wanted to purchase more properties, right? I set that goal of purchasing 10 properties in the next 5 years. So I started doing just that, right? We purchased this house, we rented out the bungalow that we were living in before we moved in. We purchased a condo in downtown Salt Lake City that is a short term rental. We purchased a seller financed property down in southern Utah. We're under contract on a short term rental down in southern Utah. I purchased a wrap in Arizona. And throughout that whole process, I was also wholesaling, which basically means you get properties under contract after negotiating them, and then you sell the contract to someone who would like to buy it, who doesn't want to deal with the negotiating piece, right? Doesn't want to make those outbound phone calls to sellers or agents, just wants to buy the deal, right? Maybe they don't have time, maybe they just don't like phone calls, whatever reason. You make the wholesaler makes money on the sale of that contract though. So I was doing that kind of in the process and have continued to do that now. I'm more focused on the disposition side, which means that someone else on our team gets the property under contract, and then I'm the one who sells that contract to an end buyer who's actually looking to purchase the house as an investment property, or they want to move into it themselves, something like that. So I've been wholesaling, and then also continuing to buy. So my wholesaling team has started to purchase properties for co-living, which basically means you rent them out by the room, which helps with the cash flow on the property and also helps with housing affordability. So it's kind of like it's a benefit to the investor, and it's also a benefit to the people who are moving in because it's something that they can actually afford, since rental prices literally across the country have gone up so much basically since COVID, and honestly even before that. If they want to get into a place where it's actually safe, and they have their own space, their own room, they are sharing the rest of the property with other people, but at least like their door locks, they're safe, they're comfortable, and it's a much less cost per month than to live in a place by yourself. And so, it really helps with, like I said, that housing affordability, but also the investor like cash flow perspective. So it's a really nice piece. But what I'm most excited about going forward is really focusing on lending. And so lending is something I always wanted to get into, and I really thought that it was something I'd have to do later. Once I made, my first couple million in real estate or something, I could pull out the equity and start like lending it. But I started actually lending a couple months ago from my self-directed 401k, and I'm really excited about that and our business that you and I are growing together from a lending perspective. And so that is kind of the direction I'm most excited about, continuing to wholesale, because it's giving me a ton of experience of seeing deals and seeing market trends and really understanding and hopefully finding those deals that we're going to then buy for co-living as well for our team. But our real end goal is to focus more on, buying those properties rather than continuing to wholesale, because it can be a pain in the booty. And focusing on lending going forward, because it really fits more with the lifestyle that I'm looking for with all the travel and outdoors and other things that I do. It's a lot more passive than the owning of the properties itself.
So obviously, I mean, I was there whenever you were doing all this, and I was like, what is this? What's going on? And then, you just keep going and going, and you grow and you grow. And it's like, it's just so amazing to see it from the very beginning to like where you are now, it just like blows my mind, honestly. But what I want to get at is obviously you said you're wholesaling, you're lending, you have different types of properties, co-living, et cetera, et cetera. But let's back up and let's talk about like what even inspired you in the first place to start looking at making passive income.
Yeah. So a couple of different things, like even back like when I was a teenager, I saw like other people being really reliant on others
Yeah.
for, their day-to-day income, and it scared me.
Yeah.
Right. I just wanted to be in charge of my own self. So I actually even went into my day job, right, of pharmacy, because I was like, you know what, if my husband dies, I never have a husband, I'm a single mom for some reason, I get a divorce, whatever. I want to know that I can take care of my family. And I know that pharmacy is a way to do that. And that was kind of like how I thought. I didn't really think about entrepreneurship or business. Like, I really wasn't exposed to that as a kid. So that only came later. But that's really the foundation of the why is I wanted security that comes with the passive income, right? So the type of role that I have right now as a pharmacist isn't like the Walgreens type of a role or something like that. And it's very, very volatile. I've been let go from my job twice in the past 3 or 4 years. And not for anything that I've done in particular, but the company that I work for just stopped investigating the molecules that I was supporting. And then, therefore, I didn't have a job. And you find out pretty much overnight. And when that happens multiple times, or there's a threat of that happening, you realize that it's so important to have other streams of income. And so for me, I initially actually thought it was going to be something else entirely. Like real estate was going to be like the slow play. And I was actually going to do content creation and Instagram as my full time gig. And I did it for a while. That first time I got let go from my job, I was like, all right, this is my opportunity. I'm going to do full time content creation. And I did it for a bit. And it was interesting, but once you pivot to doing that full time and you have to be 100% creative like all the time, and there's so much pressure and there's no backup, it
Right.
feels a lot different than it did when I was doing it part time. And I realized that I didn't really like it nearly as much. It wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be, and the pressure to be creative just wasn't a good fit. So I tried that out. I did 10 months of that full time, but then I realized like that wasn't exactly what I was going for. And there's still so much effort that it wasn't, the passive income, like long term, that I was hoping for. You still had to work and be creative every single day. And not that I have a problem with working or, creativity, but I really realized how important it was to build something that was a little bit more passive and had more passive opportunities, even if I didn't want to be passive at that exact moment.
Right. No, I can definitely relate to that. And in the spirit of transparency, so just listening to you talk, right? So I know you, but for others that may not know you as well, you seem to do everything and everything all the time, right? So you're a full-time pharmacist, you travel for your job, you're wholesaling, you're lending, you're purchasing properties, you have a short-term rental, et cetera, et cetera. How hard is it to balance everything?
Yeah, it is not easy. And I will say I'm one of those people that loves being super busy all the time. So people who have known me since forever, like when I was in pharmacy school, I had like 5 leadership positions in a job at one time. Like it's just the normal thing for me to be kind of doing a lot of things. So I wouldn't compare like where I am in my journey to anybody else's, even if they've been doing it at the exact same amount of time, because I do just enjoy having a lot on my plate. But that being said, I think I have realized recently that when you do that, if you're not careful, you can let things slip. And that is not helpful. So recently, in the last 6 months, I've actually started hiring assistants. And so I went through an assistant pretty quickly, and that didn't work out. But I had her actually doing kind of everything that I was looking for in an assistant. And so then instead of rehiring one person, I actually rehired 3 people. And in that process, I gave everybody like their own tasks and things to own, so that if one of them kind of falls to the wayside, it's not my whole life that's dropped at once. Instead, it's just a piece of it, and I can pick up that slack while I find someone else to replace them. So the assistants I have right now are a house manager, And this person helps with the housekeeping, like so the cleaning, the laundry, the errands. Do I have returns that they need to take back from my Amazon purchases, right? Those sorts of things just around the house. Like the other day, we got the windows cleaned, and I just needed her to be here because like I couldn't be here, and Austin, my husband, was working, right? So she was here. I'm like, hey, can you make sure you're here at this time? They're going to come over and just be in the house. Like, you don't have to like look at them every second, but like make sure they're not like messing with any of my things, right? Because I just didn't have the time to be home. I needed to go on another appointment. And I have someone that's helping me with my social media, and that's more like from a strategy perspective. So I'm still the one posting because I feel like it's like the interaction and everything. Like I want it to be authentic. I want it to be me, but I wanted somebody that's like helping me from like the top and really like building out my vision for my social media, because I had my account before, right? And it was entirely focused on outdoors and travel, and it was very niched. And for me, it felt very limiting. Like I felt like I wasn't being as authentic as I could be because it's just these two pieces of my life. But here I am. I'm still a pharmacist. I'm still doing, I'm doing real estate now. Like, what about when I want to go buy a business? I was doing triathlons for a while. I wasn't even sharing that really, besides like every once in a while. It just never really felt like my full self. And so the style of account that I started this year has been so, like just a couple months ago, it's been so different that I need someone to kind of like make sure I'm kind of hitting on everything that I'm hopefully going for, and really help with like things like this, right? And the podcast in the background, like splicing and helping with pulling the clips and things like that, right? So I have somebody doing that. And then I also have someone helping me with the real estate side. And like what she's doing is when, since my role in the wholesaling business is more of the dispo side or selling of the contracts, she'll go and show the property, right? Or if someone needs to go and get a video walkthrough, like it's not me, it's her. If we need to make marketing materials, like sometimes it's me, sometimes it's her, right? Like it's helpful to have someone as a backup, right? I'm going on a trip, I need you to handle this piece, right? So it's really helped me out kind of manage all these things because they started just escalating and I couldn't keep up, even though I loved doing all of them. So this has been really, really helpful. And I'm so glad I've been enlisting help, and I've really been using like the income I've made from real estate to kind of funnel back into these people to help me build even further.
You're buying back your time essentially, right? So kind of seeing where you're spending your time and where you can outsource that to other individuals so that you can focus on the things that I don't want to say you're more skilled at, but that would make more sense for your time to value, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's something I had to really shift into because, growing up, we never had any like hired help or anything like that.
Hmm.
Like my parents redid our entire house themselves, like including we had a flat pitch roof. They pitched the roof themselves.
Oh,
Like they redid every single room in the house themselves. My
yeah.
dad rebuilds cars in his spare time. Like he has a full-time job, but like he's not retired, and he'll rebuild a car, he'll sell it, he'll just buy another one. And it's really because he likes like doing it. He's very hands-on type of a person, but like that's just never been something I've done. And the shift has been hard, but so worth it.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it's been interesting seeing it happen too, right? But I definitely think it was the right decision for you. So
Yeah.
I applaud you for that. And then I know we've talked about what made you get into real estate and creative financing. And I'm sure, I know, we've both learned so many lessons already in this period of time, right? But if you had to just summarize it into one big lesson, what's the biggest lesson you've learned so far in your journey?
So I think the biggest thing is to find someone whose lifestyle and goals line up with yours, and then figure out a way to work directly with them and
Mm.
do what they're doing, right? Not a pick your brain phone call, not a I want to like bug you for your time or whatever. Figure
Right.
out how you can help support them, work with them, do things with them so that you can learn and you can emulate what they're doing, because there's so many people out there that are in real estate, but maybe they're a real estate agent, right? I don't really want to do that, right? That's not the wrong path. It's just a path, and it's not for me. There's people that are transaction coordinators. There's people who are door knocking foreclosures, right? There's people that are, doing really risky lending deals. Like, I don't want to do any of those things, right? I really need to focus more on my lifestyle going forward and more passive income. So I need to find the people that are generating that and work with them. And that's what we've really, I feel like you and I have been transitioning into recently. Is I feel like we're trying to identify those people, and I would encourage other people to do those same things. I wish I would have learned that sooner and started that process even sooner than we have.
Yep. I 100% agree. And I know you know that, yeah. So on a similar very like course of action here. So I know that you do a really good job of being consistent and being motivated even when you don't want to do things. I feel like you're the type of person that wants you to like make your mind up on something, you're going to do it 150%, where other people are like, yeah, never mind. You know what I mean? Like you go and do it. So with that line of thinking, like what habits or routines have you developed that keep you on track or just anything additional that you would like to add that makes you like Andrea and is making you successful on this journey?
Yeah, so I really try to focus on getting something done towards my goals every single day, even if it's hard. So there's sometimes with my regular pharmacist job that I have that it's just full, like 16 hours that day, but I still try to fit in time to continue to advance my other goals forward. Because if every single time I waited when it was, I wasn't feeling well, or I had this crazy thing for work, or I'm on a really long hike or something like that, and I just took those days off, I really wouldn't get anything done. So I try not to use those days as excuses. And I don't mean that you have to do 50, things or spend 5 hours, but there's so many ways to kind of multitask your time. So, as an example, when you're driving, like if there's a webinar I missed, I don't really ever sit down and watch the webinar. It'll be like when I'm waiting to board a flight, or when I'm driving and I know I can just really listen to it. I don't have to watch it. Like those are the times that I really like utilize so that I'm still taking advantage of moving myself forward every single day.
You're being like extremely intentional with your time.
Definitely. I mean, you
You
have
have
to
to.
be.
Right. You have a lot going on all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I like
So,
to keep it that way. So like in order to do that, you really have to make the most of all your time. And so I feel like that's that for me is like the cheat code, right? Is I don't really have a significant amount of downtime because I try to maximize it all the time.
right, right. So that definitely makes sense. So let's talk a little bit more about piece of advice because these are my favorite questions to ask. So we already talked about like what your biggest lesson was, but if you could give like one piece of advice to someone that was newer in their financial freedom pursuit, right? Whether that be through long-term rentals or STR, lending, whatever it may be, and they're first starting out and like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, what would your piece of advice be to them?
Yeah, I feel like we've heard this piece of advice before, but it is, I think, the best is assess what your goals are for your income from real estate or whatever your journey is in particular, and then go specifically in that direction. So I'll give you an example. A short-term rental property, while it may sound really cool and it may be in an awesome location, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to give you the passive income that you think it is. It might give you a lot of income, but you will be very busy answering people who have questions about how to unlock the lock that you gave them the exact code for and a picture of. They still won't get it, right? Or which doorway to go in because they've tried the key on the side door, even though you have a picture of the front door, right?
Right,
So
right,
I really think it's important to assess what your actual goals are. If you're looking for passive income, then you
right.
should focus on figuring out ways to generate passive income versus, which sounds like it makes sense, but
Right.
like then you see people go off in this other direction, right? And I'm so guilty of it. I'm like, oh, Airbnb is the right way to make this, lots of
Yep.
income, but it's not passive. And so if passive income is truly what you're looking for, because I still really enjoy my job, right? I don't necessarily need to leave it. I just want to be protected from when something happens in the future.
For
I
sure.
want to make sure that I'm moving in the direction of getting more passive income.
Yes, yes. We hear that all the time, right? And it's such a good piece of advice. So I
Mhm.
do have a question about a comment that you made that you wanted to acquire 10 properties, right? So I remember when I was newer to real estate and everyone would say, what are your goals? And I was like, I don't know, like to own property. And then it soon shifted to, well, how many properties do you want to own? And like everyone would be throwing out these numbers and I'd be like, oh my God, they want to own 200 properties. Like, where are they even getting this number from? Where is this coming from? How do I figure out what I need? So where did that number come from you? And then has that changed?
Yeah, and that's a really, really good question because the number came from me for me just because I thought, okay, two properties a year over 5 years seems like a reasonable amount of properties I could onboard and not get too overwhelmed with, right? So I figured, okay, I kind of have 6 months at a time of like learning the ins and outs of every property before adding another one. So I didn't want to get like too overwhelmed. And so for me, that number wasn't really about anything with like finances or anything like that. I really figured, okay, eventually in 20 years from now, those properties would generate me enough income for retirement, like when I was ready for that. But what turns out, so we were buying these 10 properties, and as you know and have experience with, when you calculate your cash flow, it doesn't always end up being exactly what you thought it would be. And in fact,
Yep.
one little thing like a air conditioner flooding your entire condo can throw things off, right?
Yep.
And so when things like that happen, it's a drastic like impact to the cash flow projections that you had and everything like that. So I actually realized for me that it made a lot more sense to focus on newer properties
Mhm.
that did not have a lot of capital expenditure. So like big things. Obviously things can happen. Acts of God can happen. Some crazy storm can come in and wipe things out. But you can't like base things off of that. But I really found for me, like I wanted to focus more on properties that were nicer and newer, that had property management in place that maybe didn't require as much of a hands-on perspective from me. So for properties that me and my husband are purchasing going forward, that's what they're going to look like. So we're under contract, I mentioned, on a property down in southern Utah. That's a short-term rental, but it is zero management by us. We literally enroll it in the portal for management, and then we don't think about it anymore. And then it's a place we want to go and use, and we want to own it for forever. We love the location, but we're not like hands-on in any capacity. And so for me, it kind of shifted a lot like away from like let me just get these next property, get this next property, get this next property for my own personal owned entirely by me portfolio,
Right.
and closer to how am I going to get the income goals that I'm looking for. And so I'm still buying properties. I'm not saying I'm not buying them, but I'm not like having to buy them immediately. And
Right.
I'm really more focused on taking that cash I would have used to purchase a property and putting it into lending instead.
Yes. So it sounds like you're working backwards in order to come to the answer to this, right? So how
Mhm.
much money would I need to make monthly? Let's say you want to retire. How much money do you need, right? And then how do you acquire that much money monthly? Is it through STRs? Is it through long-term rentals? Is it through lending? And figuring out what mechanisms work together so that you can create that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's really correct. And I think when you're thinking about long term rentals, for the most part, the average amount of money that you will see from most long term rentals is anywhere from $150 to around $300 per door.
Mhm.
So, obviously, if you're buying a single family home, and let's say you're getting the top end of that, and there are no capex problems because you bought the newest property that existed, which those two things probably wouldn't line up, but let's just say that they did. $300 a month is nice. I will welcome all money into my life, but that's obviously not going to be something you can retire off of. And so if you got 10 of those properties, like my goal, 10 in the next 5 years, what it was previously, right? That still is only $3,000 a month. And I will tell you that doesn't even cover my mortgage at this point in time. So
Right.
we would need significantly more properties than that in order to be able to retire, which is why the pivot into lending makes so much more sense.
Yeah. Can you expand just a little bit more on maybe some other benefits for lending? Like maybe why you chose that to pursue that more than the other strategies that we just mentioned, like short-term rental, long-term, wholesaling, possibly. Just, why does that align more with your lifestyle outside of what you've already said?
Yeah. So, I mean, just this year alone, I went to Iceland over, New Year's, went to Hawaii. That was actually for work, which was really nice. I'm going to Norway next week or maybe last week, depending on when this aired. We have our 10-year wedding anniversary and we're spending it going to Africa for 3 weeks. So you can clearly tell that like managing and dealing with like day to day things related to properties probably isn't the best fit for me. I absolutely love travel. I travel for work and for fun. I love being on an airplane. I love being on the go. And then when I land somewhere, I love getting outside and hiking and backpacking and having no cell service. And imagine being a tenant who has a toilet issue or something, right? And calling your landlord and it being out of cell service for 3 days. Like, that's clearly not ideal, right? And so for me, I think that lending makes so much more sense. So, not only for my lifestyle of things I'm doing outside of work, but also when I am working, it is extremely busy, right? I just mentioned the days where it's like 16 hours at a time. I still try to get a little thing in, for real estate, but like clearly that's a really long day. And I just don't necessarily have the time to continue to onboard new properties. Even if there's property management, it just is a lot of like headache. You have to find them, you have to vet them, they have to do their own onboarding, and then they require you to fix something, even though it's brand new, whatever it is, right? There's so many things with buying properties that takes so much time versus lending. You obviously have to vet the person and they vet the deal and all of those things, but you loan out your money and then they're the ones that have to deal with all of those things, right? All the fixing and the rehabs and the tenants and the toilets and all those phone calls, all those things go to them and not to you.
So it sounds like obviously there's still stuff that needs to be learned in each realm, right? Like you still need to learn about lending, what it entails, how to be safe, how to vet borrowers. Same thing as you would need to learn how to, vet tenants for a house that you're renting, or how do you manage a short-term rental. But it's just a matter of like, how much time do you want to commit once you've actually mastered that? So once you understand lending, like that can be more hands off, right? Whereas, like if you can't hire a management company because it cuts too much into your profit, you're still going to have to be actively doing that, right? And you can't necessarily step away like you'd like to. So it definitely makes sense how it lends to a little bit more flexibility, especially for your lifestyle where you're traveling a lot, or other individuals where you may just have a full-time you have a full-time W-2 that's very demanding, right? Maybe
Mhm.
you are the core caregiver in your family and you have no extra time in the day. You are, making the meals, taking care of all the children, and there's barely any time left for you. So they're all just different scenarios that you can think about that maybe one of these situations makes more sense than another. So thanks for saying that. Definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
So I know you just almost answered the next question, right? So talking about all the different places and plans that you have for traveling, I know no one in the world that travels more than you. Anyone that knows you, I think that's the main thing that they know about you is that you are constantly on the go, constantly on planes, constantly traveling. I think you just mentioned the other day that you're booked out until November for weekends, right? So, with all that in mind, tell us your bucket list travel.
Yeah, so I did mention this one. I am super excited. So we have never been to the entire continent of Africa, any countries there. And so me and my husband are going on safari and other adventures and hitting several different countries in Southern Africa. And so we're just really excited to experience the culture and see really cool animals and get a completely different experience from here in the US or other countries that we've been to so far. And so I'm really looking forward to that and, hopefully more trips like that as well.
Okay, I have another targeted question. So, for people that are newer to traveling, where would you recommend for favorite destination within the US? If someone's like, "Hey, I need to take a vacation, I have nowhere to go." Where do you suggest?
Yeah, so if you're really, really into the outdoors and you're out in the West somewhere, I would either recommend Washington State, depending on if you're, which season you're in. Like if you're in the summer, like spring, summer, or fall, I would go to Washington State. And if you're in the end of fall, winter, or beginning of spring, I would highly recommend Utah. And so for Washington State, there are three amazing national parks that you can see so much from the car if you're not really into hiking or backpacking. So they have the Olympic Peninsula, which has Olympic National Park. It is absolutely magical. Mount Rainier, and then they also have North Cascades National Park, and there's so many cool things. Like it's close to Canada, and it looks like that with just the pretty lakes and how just amazingly stunning it is. So highly recommend. visiting there in the spring, summer, or fall. And then in the late fall, winter, and spring, southern Utah is absolutely magical. The desert is so cool. Utah has 5 national parks and so many cool places outside of the national parks. And you can see so much from the car if you're not into like hiking or anything. But obviously, there's even more if you do like that. And the winter is the perfect time because it can get really hot. So I would not recommend going to Utah, at least southern Utah, in the summertime because it is way too hot to get a good experience. People underestimate how hot it actually is with the red rocks just radiating off of you, and there's deaths, and it's just bad. So I would highly recommend doing that in the winter time or something like that, and just getting the beautiful views. And Utah will change your life.
I mean, it changed yours, right? It completely
Yes,
changed your life. Yeah.
it did.
I think, yeah, we both have very good things to say about Utah. It is the outdoor mecca, so highly advise. All right, well, perfect. So I'm not just saying this because you are such a good friend, but you are such a great wealth of knowledge. And what I appreciate about you so much is your willingness and happiness to always help other people. So I highly encourage anyone to reach out to Andrea. She's super responsive and genuinely helps or genuinely enjoys helping people. I know some people are always like, oh, I don't really want to reach out, or like, is it weird if I message so and so? And Andrea is always like so helpful and just like willing. So with that in mind, with everything that you shared, if people want to work with you, collaborate with you, message you, become your new best friend, how do they contact you?
Well, the best friend spot is taken, so just that. But please send me a DM on Instagram. The Andrea Cannon is the account that I'm focusing on, just everything, right? So that includes real estate as well as the outdoors. But you still may find my other account, Andrea F. Cannon. That one has more followers, so it ends up popping up more frequently. But I spend more time now on the Andrea Cannon. I would love to connect with you there.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Andrea. I know this was short relatively with all the knowledge and things that we could talk about. This could be an hours upon hours conversation between the two of us, but I think that this was a really good opportunity for others to get to know you a little bit more, and to open the opportunity to message you and connect with you going forward. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Liz. I really appreciate us having this conversation and just having it recorded and out there. I can't wait to connect with people. And thanks, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of From Corporate to Cashflow. We will catch you next week.